When we power on, you'll see the console boot up. This is what you're going to come up to, this screen. So we'll have this first page here, layer A. I basically set these up as what your last board was labeled, in the same order and everything. This fader, we can consider it the master. It's also whichever bus you have selected. So on your last board, you had the dials for your AUXes and effects sends, or I don't think you use any effects, but you had your AUXes. Now your AUXes will be this mix 1, 2 for your AUX 1 and 2. So you press that, and now your faders are going to your AUX 1 channel. Simple as that. AUX 2, same thing. When we're done with AUX 2, you either press it again or you hit left, right, and we'll be back to the main bus. Okay. That's what messes me up most times is I'll be there and not realize it. I'm like, why can't I not hear a difference in the house? Oh yeah, I'm still selected on an AUX. So just be mindful of what you're selected on. Now your subwoofers are not automatically tied to the mains. You will now have to mix individually to the subwoofers. They are on AUX 8. The reason for that is there's certain things that you don't want to send to your subwoofers if you can avoid it, like your lapel mics and stuff. That's what will give you feedback first. So anything vocal, we won't send to the subs. So right now, I was listening to my music. I had that in the subs. We'll put piano in the subs. Guitar, we can put a little bit in there. But we won't put everything.
And am I seeing right? The computer left. Are we running? Is it?
It's stereo.
It's still stereo.
So on this board, stereo channels are set up as stereo. Will be a single fader.
Good. Nice to know that.
So when we hit select on any channel, we'll first see the bank of 8 show up. So this will show you the first 8 faders. But the fact that we have the select light on there, these controls, your EQ, preamp, high pass gate, and compressor are all active to whatever channel is selected. You can visually see all of those parameters for each strip, low res. But if you were to click on one, like decide you need to work on the EQ for lapel 1, you simply click on the EQ for lapel 1 and it comes up to full screen. For your EQ, and you'll notice this for most of your controls, there's an in button. By default, everything's off except for the EQ is on. And you'll know it's on because the in button will be lit up green. You can click and drag any point on your EQ. So your gain up, down, drag it to different frequency, and then you can choose your notch width by selecting it. Any value on the screen that is lit up yellow will be controlled by this dial. So I can click any value and adjust it just like that. If I decide I didn't want to do that, I can very easily reset any parameter just by holding the red reset button, and I'll reset my high frequency and my high mid. If I decided I wanted to completely restart this horrible EQ from scratch, I can also hold reset and just hit the in button and it'll flatten all 4 parameters. The reset works with any parameter as well, given that your high pass, and high pass will actually show in your EQ screen as well. with that reset, you also have a copy. So if I back out, if I hold copy and I press my in button, you'll see I copied handheld 1's EQ. If I go to handheld 2, I can actually just paste it.
Since they're the same mic.
I didn't copy it properly. Copy, PQ, hand 1, go to handheld 2. Oh, I held copy. Hold paste, and then you can just hit select and it knew as EQ, or I can hit the N for the EQ, but since it's in the EQ already, I just have to hold paste and hit that select and it'll automatically drop it in there.
Nice.
And since these are identical microphones, that should hopefully work. What a compressor is. You probably won't use a compressor much. The place you might use it is on your singing vocal mics and maybe your piano. So what a compressor does is, as you can see here, imagine your incoming value, your incoming level is this bottom of the graph, and your outgoing level is the vertical axis of the graph. So if you see there's that bend in there, what a compressor will do is, as soon as it hits, say right now it's at 21 dB. As soon as your input level hits 21 dB, it's going to start getting knocked down at a 3-to-1 ratio. So if the incoming signal is 24 dB, you're actually only going to be outputting 22 dB. So when a singer all of a sudden hits a really loud note, it's going to help you make sure you're not like blowing everyone out. They decide you need to get the volume up for all their singing, and then they decide to all of a sudden get louder. This will help kind of limit how loud it actually gets, so you don't have to run them lower the rest of the time.
So, compressor for dummies, setting it on a vocalist, what would the protocol be for that? Brand new vocalist comes up, how do you adjust that?
So you want, let me see if I can actually kind of give you a real world example here. Check, check, check. So we'll get on handheld 1 here. Check, check, check. Turn the compressor on. So as I talk here, pretty full volume. If I take the threshold down, check, check, check. Check, 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 check. So right here, well, check, check, check. Right here, I'm about normal volume. Either way, I'm not hitting the compressor yet. Now that I'm hitting here, if you notice, I'm talking louder, but it's not getting too much louder out there. So a good practice for that is find where you like the volume in the room. Start with your compressor either off. No, I'd say a good practice, start with it on. Get your threshold a little higher. Your threshold is always on this dial. I'll show you the other parameter here that you'll adjust. You'll start with your threshold a little higher and then find where you're comfortable with the volume being. Check, check, check. Say you don't want it to go much louder than right here. You can see on that graph, I'm hitting just below -10. So I'm gonna move my threshold to maybe a few dB right below that. So I'm almost, as I'm hitting that, I'm getting into that compressor. Check, check, check. I'm still not triggering it. Check, 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 check. And you'll see this red bar kind of drop, and you'll see it on this timeline here. So you want it so that at my typical loudest volume, not if I'm gonna hit a real loud note, but at my normal volume, I'm just barely triggering that a little bit. Check, check, check. I'm just barely in there triggering it. Then what you want to do is decide how much you need to knock it down. So that's this ratio. You're going to see as I turn this dial, what that's doing to the output line. So I would, by default, it's always set to 3:1. Sometimes I like coming down here to about 4.5. Especially with a room like this, a little harsher of a compressor might be better. By harsher, I mean a harder cutoff on that ratio. Check, check, check. The last feature you can do is called the soft knee. So if you see right now, you've got a perfectly straight line, a bend, and a perfectly straight line. What a soft knee is going to do is it's going to curve that a little bit. So the compressor is kind of variable as it starts to hit.
So it's not such a distinct.
Yeah, you won't see such a distinct hit on it. Check, check, check. Attack and release, you won't really need to worry about those times. By default, it's usually pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's what a compressor is. You can get in trouble using it. I'd just be careful with it. If you decide you're not liking the sound, take it back out. I would not use a compressor on lapels. A compressor can induce feedback. So I want to get rid of this. Hold reset, hit the end, back to default. Check, check, check. This does have an EQ, so I'm going to induce some feedback. Just bear with me. Check. Did you hear that little bit of feedback ring? Check. You can kind of see there's a peak there just below 200 hertz. Let me see if I can induce some feedback.
There we go.
So we'll do that with the lapel mics. We're actually gonna get right on the edge. We're gonna induce some feedback, and we'll use that to notch out in the EQ so we can reduce chances of feedback. So let's check. 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 I got offhand quick. Check. Check, check, check. Check, check. Now we're not getting any of those rings. Now that I brought it back down to a reasonable volume, check, 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 we're not getting any of that. Mm-hmm. So by just getting it to that point where it's starting to feed back, and I might have gone a touch too far as you saw, typically you can get it to just kind of sit there and ring without getting out of control. Mm-hmm. Once you find that point, you can find those and notch them out with your so EQ. Cool. And now you shouldn't get any feedback ringing there at a usable level. And actually, I can probably push that a little more. Check, check, check. No rings now.
And that's out here in front of the speakers, no less. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Yeah. Now, in a lapel, you're not going to get that. But
right.
Yeah. So that's a good way of using the EQ, using your RTA with your EQ to.
RTA is a real-time analyzer, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I see correctly your frequency knob, you would turn that to get it to that frequency that was spiking?
Yep. So frequency. It's going to move it left and right. Across, you can see your frequency range listed at the bottom. So, and you'll see it written right there. And then I try to shrink these as much as I can and notch out just what I need to. I don't go like hard notch like that, but I'll open it up just a little bit. I typically like that 0.2 to 0.5 number. I don't fully understand all those numbers once you get down here to like 1/6, 1/9. But like 0.2 up to 0.4-ish is a good area. Looking at that fader, let's talk about gain staging real quick. Gain staging is going to be important, especially since we're feeding a recording mix. So gain, you'll see that as I talk, this fader doesn't care mains, check. Doesn't care that the fader's not up. This is just whatever's coming into that physical port on the board. It's going to show you what's happening. So gain, I want this mic, and I can either use the gain knob, or I can select gain and use this knob. I want my voice, wherever I feel comfortable holding that mic, I want to try to get that as close to that 0. Now, I can tell you right here, I'm going to get feedback for sure. But I want to see how high I can get that. And that's going to be useful primarily on, I want to see the mains getting up to close to that 0 point. Check. So now as I turn this up, check. I've got plenty of volume. When I set the computer earlier, whatever your computer's set up volume-wise is what I tune this to. So it uses trim instead of gain because it's a TRS port, but we got to 9 dB of gain. So just be mindful of your gain. If you're having issues getting enough out of your fader, and you're probably used to gain, it was the top knob on your soundboard. It's now just that red knob, or in here you can click and select it.
And that's when you hit the processing and you select the actual alarm.
Yeah. Or if you're right here, you just click it. Either if you're selected and you're in this screen, you use the red knob, or you go into another layer and you can select it and use the yellow knob. Check. On this board, you have 6 assignable pages. So by default, I set everything up on page A. I mean, it was kind of there already. You have B, C, D is where you're going to find your AUXes. You also have groups. You won't use those. If you ever decide to get into effects, you'll find your effects here. These are your sends. So this is what's actually going back out to the speakers. Just like AUXes, if you want to send like a vocal mic to an effect, you'll just use these bus buttons on the right under effects. So we'll use the default effect on 1. You'll see check. It's got a nice reverb. Just by selecting 1, I can mix to that effect track. You'll see here, you'll see the return level. If I pull that down, you don't hear it so much. So that's what's actually going out to the speakers. Then what we have, page E by default, you have some matrices. Page F by default's empty. What a matrice is it's basically an aux that you can route buses into. And by buses, I mean an aux itself, the mains is a bus. Any of those you can route into a matrice. So where that's handy is, as you can see, I already have the first two set up. One of those will be the record. So the record is this line coming to this computer. I don't know how you guys use that, but I figure I'd get it hooked back up for you. That is just taking a mono sum of the mains and giving you independent control of it. So if you decide you need more for the recording, you can just push that up a little more. You'll see, if I go to the routing tab, in the routing tab, you'll see main left right. That's what's feeding it. I'm going to go ahead and turn it to max, and then you guys can use this fader to adjust where needed for your recording. Your sides are your side fill speakers. Once again, they're pulling a post fader off the mains. By post, you'll see the post and pre right there. By post, it means whatever this fader does is going to affect that. If I had it set to pre, if I pull the mains down, we'll see that check. If you were actually standing up there right now, you would see that my main left right, you're not getting any signal. We're just outputting to the sides. And you can do that by setting that to pre. For the sake of the side fill speakers, we won't want that. We want it so that if this fader is down, so is the side fill. So those side fills are going to be match whatever the main fader is doing. Your record might be something that you consider setting pre. The only reason I say that is, do you guys stream?
No.
You're just recording?
It's just recording.
Okay. I also noticed the audio line that goes to Northex speakers and such. I gotta set that up. That'll be on Matrix 3. That one you might consider pre if you have like pre-service music going. You're trying to talk to the band in here and you pull down your mains so you can hear them. The music will stay going out there. Now, what you can do with this empty page is completely assignable. You could go and completely rearrange A if you wanted, or B or C or any of those. If we go to Setup, left side surface, the first one is Strip Assign. Whatever your active page is, you'll see it on the bottom. You'll see the first 8. If you click and drag, you'll get the last 8. You can also select your pages here and be different from whatever you're selected on the side. But for now, we'll do page F. You have your inputs, your effects, mix. Mix is where you're going to find your AUXes, main, your matrices. Effects, you'll see your effects returns and sends. Your inputs. So if you decide you want to create, say for Christmas or Easter, create a custom page of just the channels you need, come up here, click, hold and drag. Hold and drag. I wanted that on 4. I'll click it here, move it to 4. Simple as that. You're creating your own user page. If you decide you don't need handheld 2, you can either click and drag it up to delete it, or we want something new on 5, I can click and overwrite it, just like that. You have soft controls. So the best use of soft controls, and it's set up by default this way. Your soft controls are 1 through 6 right here. you'll see that soft one is set up to mute group 1. What the mute group is where we'll probably use mute group 1 is everything that is band related. We'll put on mute group 1. Actually, we'll do that right now. So if we select a channel, say the piano, we'll click routing. At the top, we'll see mute assign. We'll select mute assign. We'll see mute group 1. I can assign just the individual channel right there and keep going through the individual channels and selecting that. Or I can hit view and see every channel. And from
That
here,
is part of that mute group 1. Yeah.
yep.
Nice.
Now I'm seeing all of mute group 1. I can turn on all of those. I can also at this time rename it. So I'll call it band. So now you'll see if I hit soft 1, all the band related channels are going to flash. They are now muted. You can individually mute them still. They'll stay on longer and have a short flash off. That means they're muted outside the mute group. So if I undo the mute group, you'll see it stays muted. Where that's handy is if sermon's coming to an end, you decide you want your piano to underscore the end of the sermon, you can mute the rest of these, and that's how you can single unmute just the piano then out of that mute group. And then as the band starts, you just unmute the rest of those. Let's go to IP9. If you click on the name at the top, you can input a channel. You only have so many characters, so that's why you're going to see some of these are kind of weird. Because I did the best I could with how many characters. When you set a name, you have to hit apply, or it will not save it. You can also capitalize a character, or go to numbers and special characters. Go back. You got your back arrow. The colors are weird because you can
Is that the
change
background color then? Or,
yeah.
Okay.
So you can change that color. That you do not have to apply. The colors take automatically.
Interesting.
And then black is actually just no color.
Even though it says apply.
Apply is there because I typed
Oh, when you
in
get back
a
to the
name.
letters, gotcha.
So if I were to go color without entering any name, you'll see I don't have that.
Gotcha,
apply.
gotcha.
Oh gosh, that scared me.
Okay,
let's
so
channel.
just out of curiosity, see if I'm understanding this right. So, for instance, I want to rename lap 1. I could go Dan's mic, and then I hit apply. Dan, hit apply, and it pops up there. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you won't see it change here until you hit apply.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure I understand. So.
And then just hit that little X top right to get rid of it. So now if we're PFLing somewhere else, that's going to light up red just like that to indicate
it's
something's
on.
PFL'd.
Okay.
Now I hit that and it's
Nice.
going to get rid of it.
Okay.
I wish it would do a different color
Hmm.
because mute groups light up red. Your PFL lights up yellow. Why these light up red, I don't know. I wish I would have lit up yellow to match that. I'm gonna set up your SQ drive. What's the control I'm looking for? Oh, arm record stop. What I just set up is on soft 7. If you plug a flash drive in, this is going to light up blue. think it'll be blue. Otherwise, I think the first time you hit it, it lights up blue. Basically, you can see I set to arm record stop. For some reason, you can't just, if you were to use the this recording I was showing you, I don't get why they do this, but you have to arm it before you can start recording. I don't know why they do that. So if you were to use that to record, plug in the stick, you'll actually hit it, you'll hit it again. I think it'll go red when it's recording, or it'll flash red. I don't remember.
Okay.
And then
There's
you
two
hit it
buttons.
again, it'll stop. It has colors for each of those steps. So, different menus here. Meters, you can just kind of see an overall of all your meters, your mixed meters. Effects, you can get in here and start changing your effects.
So there are built-in effects in it.
Yep.
To a degree.
Yep.
Okay.
So you have 4 effects sends conveniently right here. By default, 4 of these are set up. You can create more. You have 8 total effects racks. You can do those within a single channel using send points. So if I were to go to a channel, or sorry, I mean insert, I could go there, select an effects rack, say I want this one to be effects rack 5. Conveniently easy to mix, so you have the first 4, 5 through 8. If you needed a effects rack per a single channel, that's where you do that. I'm gonna guess you guys aren't gonna use that much. You don't really have a need in a space like this. If you want to play with the effects though, the best way to kind of start working with stuff is hit the library button, and you're going to see your different types of effects here. So you have reverbs, and then you can look through all your reverbs that are kind of pre-built and say we want to do this plate vocal, and we can recall it. It's kind of a pre-built effect that Allen Heath figured would be good for a vocal. Scenes, we can save scenes. So as soon as we're done today, I'll save a scene of just kind of like how we initially left the board. So to do that, we'll just select scene 1. We can store it. We can give it a name by clicking on the pen up there. And then after you make a bunch of changes, something's not sounding right or whatever, you want to go back to that scene, you'll just select it, and then under recall, you'll hit go. And then if you want to get rid of some scenes, you just do a delete. Scenes will also be useful for you do a little Christmas program or Easter program, save a scene of it, next year comes around, much easier to get the stuff you needed.
And you can get to that page just by hitting that scenes button, regardless
Yep.
of where you're at with everything else.
Correct. Setup, this is where you're going to find most of the user preference kind of things. So that's where we were looking at strip assign. We were looking at the soft controls. You have 6 there. You also have 7, 8. Footswitch, there is a TRS port for like a keyboard has the pedal. You can put a pedal here. You can assign different functions to it. Surface preferences. So we can adjust the brightness of the screen. The LEDs are going to be the buttons kind of behind, or the lights behind the buttons. The LCD channel strip. Then you'll kind of see there's a LED bar here, because now this has its built in.
Yeah.
So you can adjust that brightness.
Nice.
You can also adjust, all their boards, they put in white and blue. So this balance is choosing, do you want just white or just blue? Mixer config. When you go to mixer config, the first thing that's going to come up is input stereos. So this is where your computer, for instance, instead of being channel 15 on a fader and 16 on a fader, I said 15, 16 is stereo. You then have to hit apply and confirm that. Otherwise it will not save. So if we go to like 3940, apply it, and it'll save. I'll undo that. So that's how you're going to set channels to be stereo linked onto a single fader. You do have to work odd to even. You cannot decide I want 6 and 7 linked. You'd have to do 5 and 6. So that's one little caveat to that.
Okay, real quick, since you're on the stereo, say we use a split track, which like vocals are on the left channel, instruments on the right channel. How would you, and we have we have plenty of vocals coming through, so I want to lessen the vocals on a stereo channel.
I would leave it as 2 monos.
Okay, gotcha.
And then say...
That way you can have separate control.
Yeah, and you can technically patch those to any channel, each side of it, and then mix it accordingly.
Okay.
Mix stereo is now going to be your outputs. So you'll see I have subs as a mono. I have your matrices for your chord, which was a single cable, so I set all those to mono. Bus config. This is, you have so many resources in this board, so many groups and AUXes that you can work with. So by default, it's maxed out. But if you ever decided you needed more than the 8 AUXes, I could actually get rid of some of my groups, and now I have 10 AUXes. Wow. Roll is a page to be very careful with. So if we go to roll, I'm looking in here. Yeah, this is a mixed board, standard. If I were to hit that reset button, I would have got rid of everything that I've done here. So that's basically a start fresh button. So avoid going to the roll page. Ganging is, it's very rarely used. What ganging's for is almost what you were talking about, but if you did want to have individual faders, but not have to push them both, you could come in here and say, let's just call that lapel 1, 2 is what you were talking about. Those two are now going to be ganged, and I can choose what is going to match. So if I choose, fader. If I choose fader, okay. Oh, I've got to apply it, that's why. Those two are now ganged. If you gang these and set just EQ, anything you do on the EQ on one of them will automatically copy over to the second one. It's a very, very rarely used feature. It's there. Since you have different kinds of mics, probably won't use it for that. That was just an example. Network, if you guys want to, I did see you had a network line down to this computer. If you want to put like a switch here, you'd run the line to here and then have iPad control.
For the sound.
Yep.
Wow.
It will also work on Android phones and iPhones.
Oh my goodness.
They also have an app, and this might be useful, called SQ1 Mix. So what SQ1 Mix is log in with you open that app, you connect to the board. You then select an aux. So you're not going to mix to the mains at all. You select an aux. So that's, say your piano player has that one mix app in front of them. They can mix their own aux feed into their monitors by them. That you'd all get through the network if you decided to patch a network in. Users, you can create users, you can password assign them. Utility. Here you're going to see firmware version. If we need to do an update, you'll see your current version. Calibration, if you have any faders that you're concerned about, you can run a calibration process. Nothing Midi. Add-ons, you can add on different like processor or effects racks or whatever. Data is for a USB drive, so you can stick a flash drive in here and you can store the entire configuration of the board to a flash drive, or you can store individual scenes or libraries. By library, I mean like if you create a EQ for your lapel mic, you can save that into the library so you can recall it if someone changes it.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
So you can move those individually to a flash drive.
That'd be good to get like Dan's, yours, and your guitars, since you're consistently up there.
USB utility. This is once you put a stick in here, you'll see its capacity, free space, use space. You can format the drive from here, and then you can also come to firmware update and update it. If you're going to do an update, format the drive in the console first, and then put the files on it, and then do firmware update. Allen Heath is very finicky with updates. I've had a client brick one of our consoles trying to update a Allen Heath board. SQ drive, you can actually replay and record to the flash drive. So you have your recording over here, or you could do it off a flash drive. Stick a flash drive in there. We're able to set it to a soft key here so that they press the button once, it gets it ready, press it again, it's recording. End of the service, they press it again, it stops the recording. They can take that, post on the website.
Does it put it in an MP3 or what format does it save it in?
I believe it's a WAV.
It's a WAV file, okay.
So you can either do the stereo, and I'll show you, you can actually assign what you're recording. So by default, it's set to your main left, right. Once you have a file in there, you can then select it and then play it back. You'll have your play controls. And that'll come on to USB. Or you can do multi-track. So you can record every channel individually to a flash drive. You'd actually just select, I think you just select which channels you want. That way you don't record a bunch of empty channels as well. Auto mic mixer, I don't use ever. I/O, so this is where you're gonna do all your patching. Channels, there's multiple ways to, or there's two ways of patching. Outputs, all your outputs have to be patched here. So you'll see we have inputs, outputs, and you have nothing that'll use tie lines. So if we go to outputs, which it'll come to by default, it'll also start at local by default. Local is the ports on the back of the console. S-Link it's a digital audio snake, so you could have I/O at the stage over a Cat5 cable. That's what S-Link is.
That'd be like if you wanted to use the individual monitors and that, you could use it that way?
Well, no, you'd pull a Cat5 to the stage, and then you'd basically have the same I/O on the back of here at the stage instead.
Gotcha.
So right now you had all the analog lines coming back. We get rid of all those. Everything would plug into a rack up there. ME is personal mixers that you'd have to have the digital snake for. USB. So this USB is a little different. This USB is just an actual USB port that you can plug into a computer. So that's something you could actually look at right here. Instead of this Focusrite box, you could actually plug this USB directly into the back of the console and get the recording directly to here. You can also patch every channel individually to it. So if you're using like Tracks Live or some kind of DAW, you can record every channel and remix it later. IO port is an expansion card. You guys have no expansions in here. So by default, it kind of creates some patches here. I've already adjusted what I've needed to. So you'll see record matrix is coming out port 10. Mains are 11, 12. The only reason I did them in that order is 11, 12 actually by default are set up as your mains left, right. And on the ports on the back, they're labeled L and R. That doesn't mean you have to use them there. I just did because it's labeled. And then there's 2 TRS outputs, A and B. Those were used for your subs and sides. AES is another protocol that you guys have nothing here, AES, so we won't even worry about those. To patch though, you just click in any box, and the first time you're gonna get a pop-up. Do you want to actually do that? And if you say yes, you will no longer get this pop-up anytime you're doing patching. We're gonna say yes, so I just unpatch those two. And we know they're unpatched because they're lit up a little brighter. So any channel that we've patched somewhere is going to be darker. Anything unpatched is going to be brighter. That's only on the top row. So outputs 1 and 2 are aux 1, 2. We'll leave that there because I'll plug into your aux amplifier into those ports. Your inputs, same idea. So on input channels, it'll actually pull in the name that I've entered here. So you can see guitar, and we'll need to do some line checking, but once we figure out where that patch is, say guitar is actually coming in port, or is on patch point 8, I would just choose 8 instead. The other way of doing it is if I'm in processing and I go to the guitar, we'll start from here. The top section is your preamp. If I come here, you'll see source select. I see local socket, and I can do 7. So that's the other way of doing patching. This way might be a little easier on a Sunday morning. You realize someone's patching to the wrong spot. While you're on their channel, you can go ahead and just fix it right here. We're always on local. You can choose whatever cable they're on. Simple as that. So you don't have to switch over to the IO page. The other benefit of that is as soon as you guys are connected and have everything figured out, you'll immediately start seeing signal there on that fader. I brought up that library when we said in the EQ. When we create the EQ for the lapel mics, once we create that EQ, we'll go ahead and hit library, user. Factory is everything that this board came with built in. We'll go to user and we'll store a new one, and we'll call it lapel mic or headset mic or pastor's mic. We can save those EQs in there. Then once they're in there, we would select them and use that recall button.
It's good for Mel too, regardless of who else uses it.
And so if it were to get changed, you can just go to that library, click on it, and it'll put it back in that line automatically.
Yep.
Okay.
I save it in the library, in the user library, and just go to the next channel and recall it. Either way. Shutdown, you're not just going to shut off the rack first. You actually need to hit this processing button, and you can be in a channel or somewhere. You can be here. First time you hit processing, it's going to go there. Basically, you're going to hit the processing until you get this screen, and we're going to do shutdown, yes. And it's going to say it is now safe to turn off. There is a button on the back. We're not going to use that. The easiest way will just be to use your key. And the reason I say that is now when you turn your key back to on, it'll automatically start this up.
Nice.